Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cultivating Changemakers from Renewable English. It's wonderful to be back on. It's been a long time. We were last on all the way back in July, and even Estrella is so excited. She's making sure her knees are super clean. Great news. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you for joining us. It's lovely to have you here. Just a reminder, this is Cultivating Changemakers, and we are changing the narrative on eco-anxiety. What is it? Where does it come from? And what it isn't as well is kind of important. As always, you can find us on the socials. We are also on X. It's called X now, isn't it? Yeah, that was bad. Somehow forgotten that Mr. Musk had decided to change it. You can find us here, of course, here on YouTube, where you're probably already watching us now. And then, last of all the links I'll be giving you today, you can, of course, buy us a coffee just to say thanks. Because remember, this is completely free now, and it will be completely free forever. All 3 series are completely free. Not only this one, but also number 1 and number 2. Series 1 is all about making your course book greener, and Series 2 is all about the SDGs and going beyond them. So, before we begin, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm just wondering, when somebody mentions the climate crisis and things like that, and climate change and all of those issues, I want to know if you've ever felt any of these feelings. Now, if you need the worksheet, it's available there in the chat box. This one's just having a quick scratch. You're going to say hello, Estrella? She's too busy scratching. Don't you wish you could scratch the back of your head with your foot? Don't do enough yoga to get there yet. What do you think, Estrella? No? Not interested? Go to sleep. You'll be fine. I've interrupted her during her siesta, so she's not particularly impressed. So how do you feel? Have you ever felt these emotions when the climate crisis has been mentioned? Ever felt scared? Have you ever felt motivated? Now, if you can find me a picture of motivation, then I'd love to see it, because doing that one was an incredibly tricky task. Have you ever felt uninterested, like me, trying to somehow plough my way through Ulysses? I wasn't drunk, I promise. Have you ever felt powerless, like you just can't do anything? And the last of all, have you ever been made to feel guilty? The way I feel when I'm experiencing my favourite guilty pleasure, which I like to call chocolate fingers. Who's got time to get a spoon? I don't know. Nobody's got time to get a spoon, really, have they? So, yeah, I guess chocolate fingers is how I feel guilty. But have you ever been made to feel guilty? We recently did a lesson with Macmillan. We did a live lesson on Wednesday all about greenwashing. And one of them that we looked at, thanks to Sally Ho, a brilliant article she wrote, I'll put it in the description, all about the different types of greenwashing. One of them being green shifting, when the blame is shifted from the large to the small. So maybe the local government telling you to not wash your car, and then going on and continuing to water, allow golf courses to water themselves and be watered, and so on and so forth. All sorts of different things. So, yeah. Green shifting. Have you ever been made to feel guilty? I'm sure you have. I certainly have. There are definitely times when I feel guilty. So that's the first question. When we're looking at eco-anxiety, it isn't just about anxiety. It's about a whole broad range of emotions. So as you will see in the interview with Clover Hogan very shortly, it's a way to describe big climate emotions. Now, I wonder if you've ever felt any of these regarding the climate. So big thanks to the Climate Mental Health Network for this. It's absolutely brilliant. Do go check them out. You can download it there. You can see it in English y en español también. So fantastic for you there. Do go on there and check that out. There are all of these different emotions that I'm sure you have felt at some point. And my apologies, I've just realised my top button isn't done up. Because do you know what? At the moment, I am feeling an awful lot of worry and I'm feeling an awful lot of panic because here in Seville, well, everywhere in the world, it's very nearly October. And yesterday I walked past an orange tree in full bloom. Now, I've seen blossom come early. I've seen it come in January. I've seen it come in February, but I've never seen it come again. I've never seen it come late. And I saw a tree in full bloom just yesterday. You can find it over on my Instagram stories. I will show you a picture of it, but you can see right here, if I hold this up to the screen, there it is. That was a picture I took yesterday, and you can see the individual little flowers on there. So yeah, I've been panicking a bit recently. It's totally normal. It's a thing that happens. So you need to understand that these big climate emotions, they are very important. And, as teachers and as people, we need to make sure there is a space where we can experience these big emotions without judgment. So thanks to Clover Hogan for that very big, very important quote. She obviously has the climate cafes that you can go to and you can feel these emotions. But from these negative emotions, you can also find positive emotions. So what isn't eco-anxiety? What isn't eco-anxiety? Well, it isn't new. These big climate emotions have been around for a very long time. People have felt them before, people will feel them again. It also isn't an illness. Now, don't get me wrong, if you are feeling very anxious about the climate, if you are feeling very anxious about the climate crisis and the way things are going, and you feel the need to seek professional help, absolutely do that. But eco-anxiety, the umbrella term, it is not all about an illness. It's about all of these other emotions, and we can use these emotions, we can bring them forward, and we can use them for positive good, for the positive as well. And most importantly, it isn't your fault. Much like the climate crisis isn't your fault, feeling these emotions is not your fault. It's completely normal. It's completely rational. You should be feeling them. It is okay. Don't worry. There are people out there who can help you, who you can connect with, and you can make a difference with together. So a very simple definition of eco-anxiety, this wonderful post that was made by Kyle, a great friend working with us here at Renewable English. Eco-anxiety is when one feels frightened or distressed about climate change or the looming threats to the environment. So that's a kind of generic term about it. But as I mentioned before, there are all sorts of other things that are at large. So why does it happen? Have a look at your worksheet. It's there for you. Check it out. These are some of the top reasons according to a number of different studies that have happened. So Force of Nature have done lots of research into this. All sorts of other climate networks have done research into this. There have been research by the BBC, by Newsround, by all sorts of different areas. And a lot of the different ideas that come from it are these 5 reasons. Now, of course, there are many more reasons as well. But these are some of the big 5. And also when I've spoken to my students, these are some of the main reasons. So experiencing an ecological event. At the moment here in Andalusia, it's very dry and very hot. We are in the middle of a drought with soaring temperatures. So that is a big cause for eco-anxiety. So how about this next one? Doom something. Doom something. What could it be? Doom. You got it. Doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is one of those big things that we do. We sit there and we just read negative remark after negative remark after negative remark. And it's not good. It's not good for your mental health at all. It's not good to only read all of these negative things that are happening. I'm sure anybody who's looked at the news recently will see the terrible inaction. And well, it's not even inaction, but the negative action that is happening in the UK with this awful Tory government making some horrible decisions that are simply anti-environment. So I can understand that this idea of, in this case we call it government inaction, but in the UK's case it's actually just reverse action. It's just doing bad things. And that is an obvious reason to feel anger, to feel betrayal. But it's also another reason to rise up and speak to your local MP and fight these different things that are happening, these terrible things that are happening. Work together, find somebody in your area and try and make a change. Because perhaps alone you may feel a powerlessness to make a change. Alone you may feel like you can't do anything. You may feel like your voice is a lone voice in the wind, but you can find others and work together and join, and your voices together will become louder and louder, and you will be able to make a difference. You can make a difference, even if it's with your neighbor, even if it's with your parents, even if it's with your best friend. You can make an enormous difference. So you are not powerless. You do have the power to make a change, and it's so important that you continue to fight to do so. And the biggest one for me that I've found, the biggest reason that I've heard about why people feel it is there's such a huge lack of importance for the climate crisis, for environmental education within our education systems. It's often completely ignored. There are some changes that are being made very, very slowly, but it's just glossed over and completely ignored when it's something that should be the key and main focus to a huge number of our lessons across the board. It should be cross-curricular, and that needs to change. So, let's have a look at some statistics. Now, I imagine these are a bit blurry. If you'd like to see them bigger and less blurry, feel free to check out The Modern Milkman. He has compiled these different statistics all about eco-anxiety, and there have been lots of different studies done, ranging from around 42% to 75% of people suffering from environmental anxiety. This one mentions that it's 57%. Lots of students say that it makes them feel anxious. 1 in 5 people are not confident that they're educating their children on the matters of sustainability. 45% of young children say that it affects their daily lives. Here in Spain, a lot more than that spend time being affected by it, whether they realise it or not. Half of the parents say they've been shamed by their kids for not recycling properly. Now, there's a lot more to do than just recycle, but if that's a place to start, that is certainly a place to start. I think the one that has concerned me the most, though, not necessarily the teachers, who half of them feel they're not equipped to deal with eco-anxiety, but the one that really upsets me is that 1 in 5 children have had a bad dream about climate change, about the environment. So if that is you, if you're one of those people, I would love to hear about it. I'd love to hear from you. It's not a nice thing to think about, that it's so deep, it's buried within people's subconscious, that they are having dreams and nightmares about climate change and the things that are happening with it. It's absolutely terrifying. So I would like to move on now to the interview that we had with Clover Hogan. Here we have the questions for the interview. They are there on your worksheet. I do hope you have taken note of it. You've written it down. I'll put these up in the top here. So when we do have the interview, you can pay attention to those. We'll play the interview twice. There are 2 parts to the interview. We'll play it twice. So please do feel free to answer as you go along. When you're ready, let's get started. Welcome back to another episode, lesson, interview of Cultivating Changemakers. It's difficult to describe how excited I am today to speak to my current guest. It is Clover Hogan. Clover, can you tell us something about yourself?
The elevator version of my introduction: I'm a 23-year-old climate activist. I'm the founder and executive director of a youth nonprofit called Force of Nature, and much of my time the past few years has been spent researching the intersection of climate change and our mental health, and specifically the rise of eco-anxiety in my generation.
What is eco-anxiety?
So, eco anxiety relates to many of the difficult emotions that we might feel in the face of the climate crisis. Even if you're not feeling anxious and you maybe just feel a bit numb, like a bit apathetic about the problem, that's super normal too, right? There's no right or wrong way to feel. This is a really widespread normal phenomenon. So, lots of people in my generation in particular are feeling very disillusioned and disenfranchised, not only in response to the enormity of the problem, but in response to inaction in the face of it. Eco anxiety is this kind of umbrella for a very rational response to the climate crisis.
I'd like to know a little bit about what first interested you in looking into eco anxiety and
When I was 18, I'd already been kind of working in the environmental space. While I was working as a sustainability consultant, all of my spare time I spent volunteering in schools in the UK. 11, 12, 13 through 18-year-old people in the classroom. Those young people shared that they were terrified of the future they were inheriting. Young people felt betrayed by adults in their lives. They felt really confused by the fact that they were learning about the climate crisis, maybe through films or social media, and yet it wasn't part of the curriculum or it wasn't a conversation at the dinner table. And so I was seeing that anxiety firsthand and seeing how debilitating it was. And I had this real realization that, you know, if we do want to empower this next generation to really create a world by our own design, we have to acknowledge the starting point that is a lot of young people feel incredibly despairing. We have to create space to, and then we really people with the skills to take themselves and to translate those.
there we go. Oh, there's the mic. It's gone. There we go. Thank you so much for that first part there from Clover. So, what is Clover's job title? What is her job title? She is, as you can see, I'm sure you've got it on your worksheets now. She's the founder and executive director of Force of Nature. Do go check it out, forceofnature.xyz. The rise of what in her generation has been the focus in recent years? You got it. It's the rise of eco anxiety. The next question is, what is eco anxiety? Now, you can answer in your own words, of course, but the answer I've got here is it's a rational response to the climate crisis. And it absolutely, really is. And what interested Clover in looking at it? Well, what I gathered from it was the fact that she'd seen it firsthand in so many young students while she was doing her visits from many different schools. And she saw it firsthand, so she decided to take action and deal with it in one fell swoop. So that's what she's been looking at recently, and that is why. So let's have a look at part two. Now, before we make a start with part two, I'm going to put the questions up here. There are two mentions in this of suffering from eco anxiety. Now, I'd like to apologise for that, for those questions. It was mentioned in the interview. The full interview will be available soon. It was mentioned in there that you don't suffer eco anxiety, you experience it. So Clover did pull me up on that one. So a big hats off to Clover and a thank you for that one. You do not suffer eco anxiety, you do experience eco anxiety. So when you hear that in the interview, just dismiss it. Don't worry, I say suffer, but I was absolutely wrong to say suffer. We all make mistakes. So let's check it out. Let's see part two of what Clover had to say in this interview. So you've mentioned why you started Force of Nature. How did you start Force of Nature?
So, Force of Nature is now about to be a 15-person team. But in the early days, I had a small platform. And at that time, The Guardian actually reached out and said, hey, this sounds really interesting. Like, can we have a conversation? I did this interview, completely forgot about it. And then a couple months later, this article comes out. And suddenly, it's on the front page of The Guardian. I have literally thousands of people reaching out from around the world. And from that, I had a number of young people reach out who said, hey, we'd love to volunteer our time and help you get this off the ground. And really, Force of Nature's growth is testament to all of those people who have taken a chance on us.
Do you have any top tips for people suffering from eco anxiety?
For one, have conversations. You might feel it's a strong term, but like gaslit by your culture because you're like, this is an emergency and we're pretending like everything is normal. So finding people you feel safe to have conversations with about those feelings, be they, fellow peers or colleagues or family, friends, finding a climate action group is a really important starting point. The second thing I would say is that impact comes from focus. We can feel really overwhelmed when we think we need to spread ourselves thin across all of the issues. So find that problem and what that is that ignites a fire in your belly. And the third thing, once you found a community, once you found that problem, is to really think about your sphere of influence. We all have these skills to show up with. So identify what yours is. And if you recognize lack of expertise within yourself, that's a really great invitation to say, well, I want to work on that thing.
Do you have any tips for educators? What sort of things can we do to help our students who are suffering from eco-anxiety?
It's so easy to pathologize this experience in young people and treat it as the problem that we want to fix rather than it as a really rational response to this other problem, right? Creating space to experience big feelings without judgment is so important. That would be the first thing. And the second would be, if you feel comfortable doing so as an educator, I'd really encourage you to show up with like vulnerability and courage in expressing your own emotions. Actually, our job here isn't to try and keep young people in the dark or pretend everything's going to be okay, but have the courage to show up and have difficult conversations and make sure young people know it's perfectly normal to feel the way that they feel.
I can't recommend enough that people go and check out Force of Nature. Thanks just for everything that you're doing, really, for the world.
Oh, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So there we saw, I don't know if anyone noticed, midway through there was a bit of a hat change. Funnily enough, I did exactly the same thing here. Something she mentions there about educators showing their vulnerability and showing their courage. Something that Aristotle said a little while back, quite a little while to be honest, was courage is the most important human quality because it's the quality that generates the rest of the qualities. So we need to have courage to deal with these different emotions. We need to have the courage as educators to talk about these big things. Now, I need a Force of Nature hat as well. I'll get onto Clover and see if there are any available that I could purchase, so I could put one of those on as well. So yeah, what were the different answers there? So Force of Nature is how many person team? It's a 15-person team. Good, there are 15 people in the team. Maybe even more now, because that interview was from a little while back. Find a climate action group. Find a climate action group. There are lots of them out there. This is one of the wonderful ones that I'm involved in, as is Alethea. Creating a space that is for big emotions without judgment. If people are feeling these big emotions, let them feel the big emotions. Talk about those big emotions and share it with them. And the last one, as an educator, show vulnerability and courage in expression in your own emotions, again, as opposed to, of course, opinions. But then, so there's all of these different things that we're talking about, all of these different ideas. Now, what can we actually do? Now, there's a lot of things that we can do. We can do the small things to help us change in our mindset and help us change. So there's lots of little things we can do. Lots of small ways that we can make changes. Have a look here at this lovely wheel. Now, we can reduce our waste. We can reduce meat in our diet. There are all of these different things that we can do that will make these small changes. Now, don't try and be perfect. You don't need to be the perfect activist. You don't need to never eat meat. You don't need to never take the bus. You don't need to always do what is right. Never go on holiday again because you can't fly, because that's just a terrible thing to do and you're killing the planet and you're evil for doing that. That is absolutely not okay. You will only put more stress on yourself and cause yourself more eco-anxiety and increase your own feeling of powerlessness. But you can take these small ideas. You can help build on what you are doing and make yourself feel that you are making a difference, but also connect to other groups and campaign to make change. Campaign with others, because if you're shouting alone in the wind, you won't make a lot of noise. If you're shouting with another person, you'll make a bit more noise. If there's a whole bunch of you shouting, then that noise will be heard and you will be listened to if you keep on shouting. So volunteer. Think about your career choices. Think about activism. Think about where you vote. Think about where you invest. Have a look at these different ideas. to make sure you are making a difference. Don't think I can only do it by putting solar panels on my roof, or oh no, I need to buy an electric car to make sure that I'm not destroying the planet. There are so many different ideas that you can be involved with, because the only thing we truly are in control of is our mindset. The only thing we can really make a difference with is our mindset and the way that we look at things and the way that we deal with these different ideas. So it's really important that we do make sure that we are taking those steps to make a difference with these mindsets. We are making a difference, and we are trying to increase our own power, but understanding that you don't need to be the perfect environmentalist. Please do check out Clover Hogan's amazing keynote speech that she did at Change Now. It was absolutely incredible, and it's all about that perfect environmentalist. Now, last of all, I don't know why I went to a blank screen there. Last of all, I would like to share with you what are called Ali's thoughts. Now, she didn't record the video this week. My apologies. That's all my fault. But she wants to know, what mark are you going to leave behind? You do have a responsibility to take care of the planet, but you also have a responsibility to take care of yourself. Be good to yourself. Use your power and energy to make change in yourself and in others. So it's something that we can really make sure that we do, that we can make that change in ourselves and also make that change in others. So that is about that for today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. It's been wonderful. Don't forget, if you feel like coming along and dropping us a coffee, feel free to do so. You can also give us a follow, like and subscribe. And that, everybody, is that. Join us again in a couple of weeks to talk all about fast fashion and what's not so great about it. And I'll speak to you very soon. Bye-bye.